Well, hey there, folks. This is Dr. Franklin, and I'm back again with another mini lecture. This one is focusing on problematic internet usage, and this can be problematic internet usage as it relates to online gambling, smartphone usage, or video games. And we're going to talk about all of these different problematic ways of using the internet within the context of ethics. Specifically, folks, we're going to talk about factors that impact professional struggles with diagnosing someone with an internet based problem. So, just spending copious amounts of time on the internet is not enough to warrant a diagnosis. There are lots of factors that need to be taken into consideration. And from an ethical standpoint, diagnosticians need to be cognizant of these factors. We'll talk about that a bit in this presentation. We'll also talk about facets that explain why individuals engage in problematic internet usage. The third thing on the docket is a discussion about reinforcement schedules and brain reward pathways, as all of this is connected to problematic internet usage and, in particular, social media engagement and social media addiction. Finally, we'll wrap up this presentation by discussing factors that lead to habit forming internet usage. And we're really going to approach this from a corporate standpoint. So we're going to look at the knowledge that a lot of corporations, a lot of businesses have, a lot of technology designers have. And how they use this information to their advantage to get you addicted to technology. So this presentation may serve as a means by which you become more aware of problems that can be explored within the context of research. And it can also be a presentation in which you're more aware of some of the real ethical issues that present themselves with the advent of technology. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Problematic uses of the internet, online gambling, smartphones, and video games are all receiving increasing recognition as potential health burdens. One of the struggles professionals have in conceptualizing these issues is that some people are not addicted to the internet, but rather they just use the internet to fuel other addictions. For example, online gaming disorder is recognized in the recently released DSM 5, and oftentimes this disorder co occurs with other syndromes. Some researchers believe that internet related disorders are best conceptualized on a spectrum of related and independent disorders. There are several facets that explain how and why people develop problems with internet use, social media, and gaming. Growing evidence suggests that internet addiction is associated with brain structural changes and decreased control of executive functioning. That is, functioning connected to our abilities to inhibit. And especially, this is the case in the orbitofrontal cortex, in that that particular region has reduced thickness. The iPace framework has been proposed as a framework that emphasizes relations among predisposing neurobiological and psychological factors and how these factors affect how situations are perceived, affective, and cognitive responses, and they ultimately affect decisions that lead to gratification. Paul Smart believes that the internet is a new type of ecology that allows us to have a cognitive extension of our minds. As such, his take on the internet sounds a bit like Floridi's metaphysical conceptualization of the infosphere and how things have inherent value. Floridi believes that interactions are constantly taking place in the infosphere, and there's the possibility that the internet could cause damage if entropy occurs, or it could be beneficial to human beings. Just as it can be debated that a spider's web is a tool to accomplish the spider's goals versus just being a tool for trapping prey, one can deliberate on how the internet in itself could be an addiction or a tool for accomplishing a wide range of goals. Minery argues that the World Wide Web is not simply a product of human construction or a tool, but rather they are systems of human beings not bound by the body that make up our increasingly digital existence. Researchers have used Richard Dawkins' phenotype work as a means of describing how the World Wide Web could be conceptualized, in addition to using Ruth Millikan's work to discuss how interrelations amongst web based neural systems enable individuals to have extended minds via the World Wide Web. Excessive social media usage can be extremely problematic. Social media has a strong impact on users because the online reinforcement offered represents a variable ratio schedule that produces the high steady rate of responding found in gambling and the lottery. There are multiple rewards in social media, and these include receiving a like. These also include receiving a friend request, affirmations, chimes, a comment on your status, and being tagged in a photo. Getting these types of rewards sporadically places the person in a state of anticipation. In variable ratio reward schedules, the brain cannot find the pattern and it will promote a behavior. For example, checking the phone, posting updates, tagging friends in posts, reading posts, etc., until it finds a pattern. Variable ratio schedules may help to explain the increased instances of cyber addiction. So, what exactly is happening in a person's brain when he or she sees someone like their post on social media? Well, dopamine acts in the nucleus accumbens, which is a part of the ventral striatum near the hypothalamus, to attach motivational significance to stimuli associated with rewards, and the orbitofrontal cortex is involved in the coding of stimulus reward value. Those are just a couple components that make up the reward pathway in our brain that gets directly or indirectly stimulated by drugs such as opiates and amphetamines. Video games and computer games have been shown to activate the dopaminergic system in our brains as if they were drugs. Given how prevalent the internet, smartphones, and video games are, and how integrated they are in our cognitive systems, it's worth realizing that the pervasive and covert influences can be disruptive to a user's autonomy or independence. Constant exposure to algorithms and algorithmic devices aimed at manipulating thoughts and behaviors bring with it a host of ethical concerns and dilemmas. It is best to consider internet addictive behaviors on a spectrum because to do otherwise would result in pathologizing normal behavior. Ballou, Schmintel, and colleagues argue that some behaviors, such as gaming, shopping, excessive work involvement, and hypersexuality, are simply beyond the norm and not necessarily addictive, and the criteria used to define any behavioral addiction can lead to the pathologizing of any excessive behavior. Instead of focusing or being preoccupied with repairing the worst things in life, Suleiman and others have focused on building positive qualities. King, a positive psychologist from the University of Missouri, is interested in Aristotle's virtue ethics and the meaning of happiness. In particular, she pointed out that there was much overlap between two of Aristotle's conceptualizations of happiness: hedonic, that is, the enjoying self, and eudaimonic, the growing self, in an effort to fix the rift that existed in cyber psychology. Positive computing involves a scientific and applied approach for improving the quality of our personal experience with the goal of increasing wellness amongst other goals. To this end, many groups have created devices that aim to produce positive mood states with the usage of virtual emotional parks, virtual reality, interactive digital media, and other devices that assist individuals in reaching, engaging, and self actualizing experiences. Applying Aristotle's virtue ethics to a discussion of problematic uses of the internet, online gambling, smartphones, and video games entails not placing individuals into black and white categories such as addicted and non addicted. Users of technology fall on a spectrum of disorder from heavy use to problematic use, and there is wide variation in the type and severity of symptoms experienced. Secondly, one must take into consideration that technology is a new type of cognitive ecology that is extremely prevalent. What looks like a behavioral addiction to an octogenarian may look like the norm for the vast majority of millennials. Many physicians, psychologists, and psychiatrists will have to consider if technology usage of a person is a neurobiological compulsion or the simple logical outworking of a spectrum of technology. Additionally, concerted effort will need to be given to considering the functions and individual motives that drive online gaming. There's also this increased need to focus on the positives of technology usage, given the abundance of studies that highlight problematic findings related to technology usage that are sometimes just context dependent and transient states with frequent spontaneous recovery. Activation of the dopaminergic reward system, when a person receives social media alerts does not necessarily mean that the person is addicted, but it does highlight the power of that stimuli. Internet applications, social media, smartphone applications, laptops, PCs, and game consoles all provide us with the reinforcements we are biologically pre programmed to need and desire. Many designers know how the brain operates, and they are faced with whether or not it is moral to manipulate users with this knowledge. If corporations that focus on establishing and maintaining user traffic were to discover the neurocognitive findings I've discussed in this lecture, they would be tempted to adopt the principles and exploit them to make money. In fact, Nir Eyal in 2014 actually wrote what is now considered an important description of tricks for building habit forming devices and technologies. Four sequential phases were identified, and they include the following. Number one, trigger phase. Number two, the action phase. Number three, the reward phase. And number four, the investment phase. Using a push notification example, the trigger phase involves the user being notified. The action phase represents the user swiping or tapping on the notification. The reward phase involves the user being rewarded on a variable schedule. And the investment phase represents the increased time and effort that the user made use of the product, which may increase the user's valuation of the product. Entire companies have been created to optimize push notifications. These companies and their clients are not necessarily concerned with whether people form bad habits or if their technologies lead to problematic use of the internet or anything else. But if you do become addicted, there is an application for that as well. For example, an app called Space. From an ethical standpoint, what would make companies do this? Well, two branches of ethical egoism may explain this behavior. Adam Smith promoted an egoistic approach toward morality that was grounded in economic benefits that this would convey to society. He believed that if people acted in their best interest in the marketplace and strove to make the best product, then when they generated that product, they would mark their price down and personally reap the reward. This would in turn create competition for an even better product, and indirectly, the client would benefit. Anne Rand, on the other hand, provided more of a straightforward brand of egoism as she looked at self interest as a virtue and altruism as a vice. She believed that altruism erodes a person's ability to understand the value of a human life. There are opponents to those perspectives and researchers that believe that technology should not be considered to be detached from the societal dimension and that voluntary change brought about by persuasive technology should require that the user be free from external controlling influences.